put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome back. It is 7:42 a.m. and yes, that's the junction there. If you're heading into Scarborough, heading to Glen Road, or just on that thread between the west and heading east, that's the vicinity there where we're seeing the traffic flow happening in that area. So it's 7:42 a.m. and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. On set with us this morning, we are speaking the Division of Education, Research and Technology. We're speaking about the student support services and also treating more specifically with exceptional education needs. And on set with us, we have representing the student support services, Susan Grant and Marion Kent. Morning, and welcome to you, ladies.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here.
All right. Well, before we even dive in, we just had that interview starting off with the wife of the Prime Minister.
Yes.
And, Ria would say very nicely, as I have these two ladies on set, just give us a quick touch. International Women's Day, the significance and the standout for you as a professional woman in society.
Well, I'll start first, Susan Grant, and thank you for having me here. And I grew up with a strong mother, and I listened to Dr. Sharon Clark-Rowley speak about her mother and the impact it had on her. And my mother, I thank God that she's living, and she was the role model for me, one of the strongest women I know, who taught me to speak up and to be assertive and, how to be strong, but also, and I know it's not a term that we use all the time, be a wife and manage a home. And I thank God for that duality. She was also a businesswoman, or is a businesswoman. So she showed me all of that. And it paved the way for me to be in this field and be in this position and not second guess myself and not be intimidated by circumstances, and to be there for other girls also. So that is what that means to me.
Nice, Marion.
So for me, my mom, now deceased, she was the person, she was a praying woman. And that was really critical, and that was really the drive that has me at the place that I am now. She's a person who, when she prayed about it, I took wings. So for me, being here in Tobago, it's me really living my dream, living and being the person I wanted to be since I was maybe about 6 years old, who I wanted to. So I think for me, my mom has always been that person who understood what our purpose was and recognized that God was a significant factor, and really encouraged us to be confident and do so. So I think those were the things that really have me at the place I am right now. So confidence is really important.
Certainly, and it seems quite naturally that this background, one would say it's almost as though the profession chose you, because we are speaking about your area of work in terms of student support services, which, as far as I have seen it over the years, is much more than just a job, because you are touching and impacting lives. Let's start off from that premise in terms of looking at the role of the Student Support Services unit within the Division of Education, Research and Technology.
Right. So Student Support Services is what it says. We support our students in our schools, our ECCE, our primary and our secondary schools, help them to transition through the school system indirectly, or directly, I should say, through counseling, through supports, through assessments, even through home visits, and then indirectly where we connect them to services to deal with some of the challenges that they may face, whether it's the challenge of choosing a career, whether it's the challenge that they may face at home because of their home situation, finances, because some unforeseen situation came in and it threw them off course through special needs. They may have a disability, and we step in and we provide direct and indirect, connecting them to services that we may not be able to provide to help them navigate this educational landscape. And of course, we do that through the support of all our officers within Student Support Services. Our school psychologist, Ms. Kent, is one. Our school social workers, our guidance counselors, and special ed teacher that we have in the unit to help navigate or help our students navigate through school and, embracing themselves. I heard Dr. Rowley talk about that, embracing equity. And we have to assist our children to understand themselves, understand what their limitations are or what their strengths are, and build on those to help them fulfill their full potential or understand their limitations and what can be put in place to help them overcome those.
Oh, certainly. And you touched on a very key area there, which is sometimes overlooked if you don't have the engagement or you don't understand the significance of it. Tell us about that aspect as we speak to exceptional education needs in terms of special education and that focus within and the importance of it within the Division of Education.
Okay, well, I must start by saying when we hear special education, we often think of a place, and that's not necessarily special education. Special education is a range of services that's afforded to individuals who are students who struggle academically, behaviorally, emotionally, socially, in fitting in and being able to perform with the reading, the math, even achieving goals. So special education is provided usually with a team or a group of individuals. So we will have the special education teacher who usually will assist in terms of differentiating the instruction. And when I say that, I mean simplifying instruction, simplifying the work so that the child can have access to understanding the concepts and as well as enable them to achieve the task or complete the task successfully. So it's really allowing individuals or students to be able to function within their areas to which they have the capacity to do so. The school psychologist, my role specifically is to do the assessment and the diagnosis for us to get a better understanding as to who the individual is, who the child is, what are their strengths. We practically may know where the areas of challenges are, and I try not to say weaknesses, because with education and with the supports, they can really achieve. So we're presuming competence. So it's really to identify what are the strengths and using those strengths to push and to ensure that at least they can be able to meet their target goals. When we say target goals, there must be an assessment in terms of a psychoeducational assessment where we're able to identify the individual's ability to process information, problem solve, be able to organize tasks and their approach to tasks and things like that, their ability to think quickly, complete tasks quickly. So when we're talking about special education, we're really looking at a whole child approach to understanding what the child is able and cannot do. Unfortunately, sometimes we recognize the weaknesses and the challenges, and that's all we see. Sometimes we don't really see that little that the child can do. So the special education is basically targeting what the child can do, and we're assisting them. So assisting them in terms of the environment, the classroom structure, the classroom size. Those are some of the things that can contribute to positive movement where the child is concerned. All right. And when we say special education, it's not every child who is not able to read that we say needs special education services. There may be other medical factors that may impact, but we're just saying that once we understand who the child is, we try our best to provide the services that are appropriate for the child, so that we're talking about equal access. So at least we have that whole conversation and thought of equity. You know, you having that chance to be the person who you want to be. Just like you asked us this morning, what were, some of us may have said a teacher. Correct. Some said, you know, the home. It started from the home for many of us. And that is what special education is. So it's not a place, but a range of services, and it's also an attitude.
Yes.
I'm happy you mentioned that. So I'd want you all to share for me, as we look at special education services, and that's really a different perspective in terms of taking a look of it. You know, the harder question would be, how effective is that for us in our Tobago space here?
Well, special education can be effective in Tobago.
Yes.
We have personnel. We have persons who are able, like I said, to do the assessment, some persons who may be able to do the differentiating of instruction, teach and guide the general education teachers within our schools. So when we're talking about special education, we're basically looking at this service happening in our general education classrooms, all right? We do have challenges in terms of the number of persons that we have available to provide this additional support with respect to differentiating the instruction, going in to guide the teachers in the general education classroom, because you will often hear they may not have the skill set. I won't say they do not have the skill set, it's just more challenging to treat with a child with a special education need in the classroom with the regular typical children there. And when we're talking about special education students, we're not only talking about those who may not be able to do, we are also talking about those who can succeed, those who can supersede those targets and those learning goals that we have. And we're talking about those who we consider to be creatives, the gifted. They too encompass the special education concept and making sure that at least these children can maximize their potentials. So even within that space, while we understand what it requires, what it's supposed to look like, and what the end goal is, we still have the gaps in terms of the limited resources through our unit as well, special education student support services unit. We have the gaps within the school system as well, the traditional type of setup for schools. One teacher to how many students, maybe their need for some supports there. The learning resources that would help to maximize, to help differentiate the instruction, to help the children be a little more interactive and actively participating in the classroom setting and learning. So there are a few gaps that we have within our system that it would show that it may not be as effective as it should, but I'm saying we have the capacity to do so.
And if I may, as Ms. Kent spoke, what she described may actually reference inclusive education, because you're speaking about our child in our traditional or mainstream classroom. And so those services that are afforded children who may have special or exceptional needs, because we speak about our children with special needs and special education, but we are seeing more and more children on the exceptional end. And what that comes with sometimes, you may see the increase in referrals for children who may be on the spectrum, autism spectrum, but they're brilliant and providing those services within that classroom setting. But the reality is that sometimes, based on the challenges that the child may exhibit, the mainstream classroom may not always be the best fit, and that is the reality. And so what next? What is in place to support our children who may need even additional structure and services in order to excel and in order to develop those functional skills? And that pushes us into the realm of, you know, our special schools and what needs to happen there, and the level of development and resources that need to go into support those structures so that all our children can have access.
You know, and I hear you, and I recall quite recently Secretary Zarisha Hackett speaking in the House to that improved focus in terms of developing capacities for special needs.
Yes.
So I want to assume naturally that this is one of our focus areas, which makes
Yes.
it probably a little easier for you as professionals within the division.
Yes.
I want you to you know, go on a little further to tell us in terms of what kinds of support might be necessary so that special education is able to be more successful and you know, provide those essential and beneficial services both at the level of the individuals as well as the family, because I know you referred to the importance of the family as well in with regard to the support.
Right. So I'll start. Of course, we have officers like Ms. Kent, our school psychologists, who will go in and do the assessments, because we really need to have an accurate picture of what we're dealing with. So that assessment piece is important, and timely assessment at that juncture. Also, one of the things that we are seeing the need for as we look at children who need that support in our traditional school is the idea of student aids. And a student aid is an individual going in there and being with a student. So it's different from a teacher aide who may assist the teacher within the classroom. And so we are looking and working with the division in bringing in that resource so that our children who need it after the assessment is completed and deem that this service is going to benefit them. So we don't just put a student aide with a child if that student aid service is not going to benefit them within the traditional classroom or the mainstream classroom. And so we're working on getting student aides in, special education teachers. That is a service that we provide from Student Support Services. And we're working with the division in increasing the human resource in that area. We may need to find Ms. Kent and the other school psychologists some support, because we are seeing an increase in referrals for children who are needing some additional support. And I want to pause here and say, when you talk about children with special needs, we are not only speaking about those who we obviously see who may have a physical disability, which doesn't mean that that child needs an aid, or the child who may be on the spectrum, or the child who cannot sit still and can't focus in the classroom. But at any point in any family, a child could be in need of specialized or supportive services based on maybe a trauma. A child may be riding a bike and fall and hit their head, and they end up having seizures and they lose some mobility. You may have a child who simply lost a parent who was so important to them, and that throws them into, depression and all that stuff and cannot focus. We have children who may have acute anxiety and may be classified as needing specialized needs. So I must make that point that special needs is not only what we see or the obvious. We have to talk about those who are the exception, who are brilliant and are moving ahead of our mainstream curriculum, and those who, because of circumstances, may end up needing specialized services. So we have our school psychologists, we have we need student aides, we need to build up the resource of our special education teacher, and then there are other services, behavioral therapists, partnering, and I may be jumping ahead, but we have to partner with other agencies like the Division of Health, to provide some of those supports, right? Because it would make sense having a whole bunch of speech therapists at education, having a whole bunch of speech therapists at health. We have to partner. And so we do partner with them to do some of our assessments, our diagnosing, right? Child who needs speech therapy, physical therapy, we partner with them and they help to provide some of those services. So those are some of the things that, services that we will need within the division and in Tobago, in order to provide supports to our children with special or exceptional needs.
I want you to speak to the extended support, particularly for families,
Yes.
not the student who is in the system, but that is the additional support for families and so on within or beyond the division?
Okay, so we have a beautiful relationship and developing a beautiful relationship with the hospital.
Right.
So through the child development clinic, when a child presents with a disability, that information is submitted to us, and then we would do the necessary follow-through. I know there are various parent support groups, so we call them advocacy groups.
Yes.
So those are available, Down Syndrome Network, Autism Tobago, and there may be others. So it's more for the parents to understand that these services are available, the supports are available as well, and I want them to take active roles. And I think sometimes because we don't really understand what special education or exceptionality is, sometimes we have parents shying away.
Right.
So most of what we have been doing within the unit is to encourage parents in that, let them understand necessarily what is it that we're working with. Hence the reason that Ms. Grant would have made mention of getting accurate information for what is happening with the child and understand the supports that are available. So we use the strength-based approach. So we understand the family network, we understand the family supports, and then from there, what is working best for them is what we try to lend support to so that the challenges that may present itself will be there. So there are parent support groups here in Tobago. I'm just encouraging parents to take active roles in them, participate, and come out and be the voice for the child. Like I said, we have gaps, and it's only through the parents identifying and working with us that we may be able to provide a more effective and efficient service in terms of special education and exceptional needs.
Excellent. Final 30 seconds. Any other key areas you'd like to highlight in closing?
Well, I would like to say parents work with us. Also be patient with us. And because the earlier we find interventions, the more support we can put in place so that your child will be able to navigate our educational landscape. And no parent plans for their child to have a disability. When you expect a healthy, fully functional child with no disability, but it happens. And understanding your child, that early assessment, early intervention, it helps it makes working with that child easier for you and for us. So I would say work with us. We will work with you. We make a commitment to support you. Yes, we're working on getting the resources that we need, but we will work with you. We're here, Student Support Services, to provide support to you.
Right, Marion, final 30 seconds and include contact information for persons needing to reach out to the Student Services, the Student Support Services Unit.
Yeah.
Okay, so just as Ms. Grant said, parents, we really want you to work with us. Early intervention is critical. Most times we get information regarding the child or regarding the circumstances at a late stage where we can't do as much as we can with the strapped resources that we have. So early intervention is really key. We can be contacted at 299-0781, extension 3109, or you can email Ms. Susan Grant at susan.grant@thadert.gov.tt.
All right, thank you so much for joining us here on set, ladies. And, really bringing that broader perspective, as one of our viewers has said, exceptional education, yes. And then you have one, you've certainly touched the heart, Miss Kent, one of the sweetest human beings I know. So when you're in this kind of profession, I think it's so important, as I always make the distinction, we have teachers and we have teachers.
Yes.
In the same manner, we look for professionals, especially within this area of student support, that go beyond just a salary or a commitment when the month is here, but more importantly, really seeking to make a difference and to assist. And I'm so happy that they have highlighted the fact and the focus that we try to think of it in extreme circumstances.
Yes.
But when you look at the broader picture, the range of services that are available, and most important, it's important for us to operate within an inclusive society from every possible arm and every possible aspect. So certainly a very powerful message coming out here this morning. And thank you so much for joining us here on set for the Tobago Updates morning show. Viewers, we want to thank you for your continued love and support and for choosing the Tobago Updates morning show. And yes, I see Ria in high energy on offset there with excitement, because I know she was glued to the screen as this interview went on this morning. But we want to thank those of you connecting with us via TV, those of you listening in on the radio on your way, and those on your device. We want to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.